everyone. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
When you need me, you didn't do anything for me, just let me know.
Let's try.
Good morning. Well, welcome to the Mashpee Men's Club today, and we have an exciting meeting in front of us. The first way we start off each meeting is to salute the flag. So please join me in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any new members here today, or?
He is possessor of a lengthy and important career, so I'm going to have to refer to my notes. For over 30 years, he was the Wampanoag Indigenous Program Director at Plymouth Patuxent Museums. He is now at headquarters here in Mashpee as the Cultural Outreach Coordinator for the Mashpee Wampanoag Education Department. He has, over his career, worked with the Smithsonian Institute, the History Channel, National Geographic, and Scholastic Magazine, to name a few. His teachings of Wampanoag and other indigenous cultures in the history of the Northeast is recognized throughout the country. He has presented at conferences at colleges, historical societies, museums, indigenous institutes, and all grades and levels of college, of schools. Darius is also a recipient of the 2016 New England Museum Association Award for Excellence and the 2021 Bay State Legacy Award. Most importantly, he's married to his loving wife Tootie for close to 20 years, and they have 4 lovely daughters. Darius, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Bert. When we talk, I need to on. Keys?
Sure.
That means good morning, folks. How you doing today?
Morning.
My language. Let's see if I can move the slides over here to go down.
Microphone?
On the right-hand side. Click.
All right, that's all right.
It should, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if you can
Full screen.
move that closer to
Maybe dim the lights, or should we? Can you guys see this? Should we dim them a little bit?
Microphone?
Yes.
Screen.
Hello.
Yeah, I think that was on.
That was on? Okay. So once again, my name is Darius Coombs, and you heard my bio. Thank you very much, Burke, and the Men's Club here for having me today. It's an honor, and I am Mashpee Wampanoag, like Burke was saying. I've been studying my people for over 40 years and doing research and such, so I had the privilege of getting paid to learn about my own history, which was really cool. Now I get to teach it, throughout the years. When I was working at Plymouth, I dealt with like 3,000 guests a day. So I've met many and many people, many and many cultures, so I wasn't just I wasn't given an education, but I was also getting an education through the folks. I was asking them questions too. So what my presentation is today is called 13 Moons, and I'm going to bring you back 12,000 years to present day. So I want you guys to strap on your seatbelts. You're going to go for a ride. It's an emotional roller coaster, our history, It has highs and lows, but we're still here today. So that's what 13 moons means, is a full 1 year cycle, because there are 13 moons in 1 year.
Upside down?
No? Let's see. Close here. Oh, there we go. Okay, you have to point. You have to
Gonna
point
kick it 3 times and swear. Any experts?
Who's the computer expert?
Why don't you touch the,
See if you can get the full screen too.
Hmm?
See if you can get it full
I've got
screen.
a larger screen too.
Yeah. Tech support's arriving.
Tech support.
The battery, maybe?
I want to see one, let's see if we can.
Rotate the battery.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
nice.
think you could probably advance it just this way or that way, but it's not. I'm looking to get the larger screen, and this is so sensitive. Did you see the word zoom?
Upper right hand.
That's where I would normally look for it, but I don't see it there.
Just move.
All the way up.
It's moving now.
Yeah, I'm not,
Way over to the right.
maybe somebody, let's get this back down. It,
You get all the right ideas.
Oh, there's a square there.
okay, what? See,
I
it's,
just
Just to the left of the
what
full
it's
man.
doing.
It's working out, it's working
This
out.
is the easiest way, is to go over here and scroll down, but I would like to get, it's me, I'm moving.
No, actually, no.
We need a 10-year-old.
I know, right?
Or a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
What kind of a program is it? It's Docs, it's a Word program,
Yeah.
okay,
We'll slide down now.
and see if you can, yeah, you can just scroll it down because it's not a PowerPoint. Oh, it is a PowerPoint, done through Google, or through Microsoft
It
Docs.
seems to be working right now.
Okay,
Right.
all right, keep your fingers crossed.
The Wampanoag guys is one nation, we have over 506 nations going across the United States. And how we're similar is how we think about Mother Earth and the land. We believe we're part of it. Where you sit, where I stand is who we are as a people. That's very, very common. How we think about Mother Earth. Water is similar, the land similar, languages are different, what people eat are different. But the most common thing is life. We respect all forms of life. Being human life, plant life, animal life, we all have respect for it, you know? So if you go hunting for a deer or go fishing for a striper, you give respect, you drop tobacco. And that's giving thanks for that animal, that fish giving up his life for you. That's very, very important. And at one time, we numbered over 100,000 people around Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And today, there's about, I don't know, maybe about 12,000, 15,000 Wampanoag people altogether. And it's a smaller community. Mashpee itself has over 3,000. So. And what happened to us all, we'll get into. For us, I'm gonna bring you to a year, we'll call it like 1511, right? Before disruption happened, interruption, disruption, what was normal for us, right? For thousands of years, like we've been around here for over 12,000 years. For us, right now, is our new year. This is when everything comes to life. This is when the fish start running upstream. This is when the birds start chirping. This is when the flowers start coming out. So it makes sense this being our new year. Everything's fresh again. In our new year, we do a big celebration. We dance, we sing. We thank Mother Earth for having another year, because it's not always guaranteed. Giving thanks back for having that year. But once this is over, we have to get to work, right? And these are the houses we live in during the summertime. We come out near the ocean, we come out near the rivers, and we live in mat-covered houses made out of cattail reed. Cattail is a water plant. And we live in single families. What I mean by single families is 3 or 4 generations. Parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, kids. This house is being 14 foot around, will hold about 6 to 8 people. Most of your life spent on the outside. You cook, you eat, you bathe outside. You only go inside your houses when the weather gets really severe. The best way I can describe how we live during summertime, if you guys been out to the Midwest, you see a farmhouse, right? You see fields. You drive up the road a little bit, see another farmhouse with more fields. That's what you would have seen if you're on a canoe on a river. You would have seen a mat covered house, then going all around the house you would have seen fields. You go up river a little more, see another mat covered house and more fields. Bottom line, you need your space for planting, and a planting site for a family may take up an acre or two of land. Over 60% of the Wampanoag diet was and is considered to be vegetables. I asked the kids, you guys like vegetables? There's no response. we have the corn, we have the beans, we have the squash, we have the watermelon, we have the pumpkin. And the ones who take care of these fields are the women, because the women are considered to be the givers of life. You gotta respect anybody who gives life, anything that gives life, right? So their job is to take care of the fields, because the ground gives life, and they also give life to babies. And there's a way of planting too. Today is actually, wow, as I'm speaking on May 7th, this is a new moon today, right? So this is when you plant your corn seed. What you do is you wait until the herrings start to run, then you wait till the next new moon, that's today. So you plant your corn. When the corn gets about hand high, you plant your beans next to it, and when the beans grow, the beans will wrap right around the stalk of the corn. What corn does, corn takes nitrogen out of the ground, and what beans do, beans add it right back into the ground. Plant your squash on the bottom, and they have a large leaf, and that will shade the ground and keep the ground soft. So it's all companion planting. They support each other. What do these guys do during the spring and summer? These are my real kids, really. Two of them when they're younger. That's Tashma. That's Tashma and Storm. Kids can do whatever they want to do, right? What Tashma means in Wampanoag is one who lifts up. That's one who's picking the berry. The stag can consume that berry to make tea. Tashma means one who lifts up. It's not because she's physically strong, but Tashma wakes up in a good mood almost every single day. And when she wakes up in a good mood, everybody feels good, right? Almost every single day, never. But you can go through four to six different names in a lifespan. As you change yourself as a person, your names will change also to fit how you are. So you wouldn't be stuck with one name going all throughout your life. We have medicine people in our community still today that see the changes in you, and they'll give you a name that will fit you. If you have just one name, you haven't changed much, right? The little one down there is Storm, and that's self-explanatory right there. Keep you on your toes, that one. But kids can do whatever they want to do, right? They were encouraged to play a lot. They'll listen and learn until they get older. Old is a maturity factor, not a number factor. They don't go by numbers. This right here, you can see that's myself and my wife, Tootie, there. And men did a lot of fishing still today. That's one thing that has not been interrupted. We still fish. A lot of people still fish for a living, you know. Everything on the waters we go for are still out there today, aside from sturgeon. Sturgeon was the biggest fish we went for. Those grow 30 foot in length. And they're found in rivers and ocean. They go back and forth. And the way we go for sturgeon is at nighttime, we have pine pitch torches on the end of our canoes. And we have torches on the end, and the fish will be attracted to this light, and they'll flip over on their belly, and we will harpoon them. Normally the sturgeon got bigger than the boat, so you couldn't put the fish inside the boat, you have to drag it in the shore. We go for codfish, we go for stripers now, herring, trout, salmon, clams, mussels, crabs. Everything we have for fishing we had back then. We had the harpoon, we had the spears, we had the hook and line, we had nets. Although back then we used lobster for fishing bait. I don't know many people today who use lobster for fishing bait, but we did. We had so much lobster back then that we'd go on the beach at low tide and pick lobster off the beach. They were crawling on the beach back then. Even if you go back 100 years ago, lobster was fed to prisoners in jail every single day. And the prisoners had a big uprising. They said, we don't want this anymore, we're sick of this. So Massachusetts made a law that you only could feed prisoners lobster twice a week. If you did any more than that, it was considered to be inhumane. That's a true story, yeah. So that's what we do a lot during the spring and summer. A lot of fishing, a lot of planting. Kids play, elders, other teachers, they've been there, done that. They can do whatever they want to do. In the fall and winter, we go inland. Inland might be a half mile to a mile inland, and what we're looking for is a valley or a large settlement of woods. That's to get the wind, get protection from the wind. The wind chill factor gets really severe around, as you know, around here. And these are the houses you live in. You live in bark-covered houses. This time of year right now is when you get the bark off the tree. This is when the sap runs, so you get the sap dividing the bark and the wood, so it peels off pretty easy. It's like peeling a banana. Then once you get the bark off, you put it onto your frame of your house, which is made out of cedar. Normally, a winter community might hold 3,000 people, so you're looking at most like small towns. We had at one time over 70 Wampanoag communities, and you guys are living in one right now, right? Mashpee. You have Santuit, you got Katuit, you got Mattapoisett, you got Nantucket, you got Agawam, you got Pocasset, Seekonk. A lot of them, I say that those names because they're town names today, but they've always been Wampanoag communities. Normally the length of a house back then would be about 100 foot long. Although we found the footprint of a house in Worcester, and that house was over 320 foot in length and 60 foot in width. Was that just a house or a gathering area of nations? Because out there you got the Nipmuc people. So you might be a big meeting area, but that's a very big house. And I'll explain how the heating works in a minute on these houses. Hunting very big still today. That has not been interrupted. You go for turkeys, you go for goose, you go for partridge, you go for quail. The four big animals being deer, moose, elk. Deer, bear, moose, elk, and bear, and deer, moose, yeah, those four right there. Small game, raccoons, squirrels, beavers, otters. You guys like the taste of skunk? No? Ever had skunk? Huh? Skunk is considered to be a Wampanoag delicacy.
Oh, really?
You know how you catch a skunk? Very carefully. Yeah, absolutely. What you do, you get two boys. One boy will be in front of the skunk, distracting him. You get the other boy that will sneak upon him from behind, and he will grab his tail and lift him off the ground. In order for a skunk to spray, he has to be at all fours, putting pressure on his hind legs to release his stink glands. You get him up there, he can't do that. That's when you knock him out and very carefully cut his stink glands out, and there's nothing wrong with the meat. It tastes like chicken. It's a sweet meat. But the meats were a lot leaner, you know. Animals were allowed to run where they wanted to run back then. They weren't cooped up. Weaving, very popular, very big amongst Wampanoag women back then and still today. The Wampanoag women are known for their weaving. We have our weaving at the Smithsonian, at the National Museum of the American Indian down in Washington, D.C., our work. And we had string. You'll be surprised when I tell people we had string. They say, you really did? I'm like, yeah, we had string. We made string from plant fibers. We used milkweed, we used dog bane, we used the inner bark of a basswood tree. You take those fibers out, you work them together, and that's how you get your string. When the Pilgrims got here, they wrote down that the woman was making string so fast on their leg that the eyes couldn't keep up with. Okay? So, springtime, summer, near the ocean, near the rivers. Winter, you go inland, away from the wind. You live in large communities, the Mashpees, the Seekonks, the Nantuckets, the Pommets, the Nossets. And that was considered to be normal, guys, for us, for thousands and thousands of years, until we did have interruption, which happened. Now, 1620 wasn't the first time we saw Europeans here. We had European people coming over here for at least 100 years prior. We had Dutch, we had English, we had French. And there's terms put on these people, right? They call explorers, fishermen, traders. If you're gonna say that, you gotta add on enslavers in one breath. You gotta say that in one breath, because this is what they did. This was considered to be normal. This is what they wrote down. In 1614, you guys heard of John Smith, right? He mapped out New England. When he left his fishing captain behind, named Thomas Hunt. What Thomas Hunt did, he went down to Patuxet, which is Plymouth today, and took 19 Patuxet as slaves. Went down to Nauset, which is Eastham today, and took 8 of them as slaves. Brought them to Spain, sold some to Spain, and the rest were sold to England. This guy right here, Squanto, he's famous, right? He was sold, he was one of them, and he was sold to a merchant named John Slaney over London, England. And he lived on Cowan Hill. He lived there for about 5 years, from 1614 to 1619. They say Squanto gained some status over there. I've asked many English scholars, what does it mean for a native person over London to have status? And they can't give me a reason what that means. We were basically indentured servants. We were pranced around, put in windows and stores. But most of us we died because we had no built-up immunity to what they had. The idea with slavery was, let's bring these people over, let's teach them how to speak the language, and let's bring them back as guides and interpreters. Like I said, on the most part, we never came back. When, but Squanto did, we'll talk about that in a minute. When Squanto was gone from 1614 to 1619, the most devastating thing that ever happened to our people happened on our homeland, right? And this happened between 1616 and 1619. It was plague. Anywhere from 70 to 90% of our people were wiped out within 2 or 3 years. This is the year before the Pilgrims arrived here. What it was, skin turning yellow, open sores in their bodies, and once you got it, you died within 2 or 3 days. Okay? Where'd it come from? What was it? A lot of people guessing hepatitis over the years. That was a common theory. Disease control came out with something called leptospirosis. And what that is from French trade ships coming over, right, up in northern Maine and Canada. And they would have rats on these ships. The rats would get off, and the fetus of the rats will get into the water system, creating an infectious liver disease. But we also know John Smith, before he left, had a man who was very sick on his boat, and he was dropped off in Maine, left in Maine. There's a lot of theories, you know, but I can tell you, I tell people all the time, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. I know the most devastating thing that ever happened to my culture. And right after that, this boat arrives, the Mayflower. The Mayflower lands on Provincetown. They're out scouting up the land, deciding whether or not to stay down there. It's a great primary source to read if you haven't read it. It's called Mort's Relations. It's the very first primary source they wrote down when they got here. It's you also can look at what are 3 visitors. Yeah, Mort's Relations is probably the best one, the first one. And they wrote down that when the men would come off the Mayflower, they would have their big dogs, and they're actually walking behind native people into the woods with the big dogs. I never got that really. And when they're scouting out the land, they found corn, and which they took. They found burials, right? Some people opened up the burial, found out what it was, and covered it back up. Other men went out there and opened it up and took from these burials. Yeah. And what happens, right, shortly after, down in Nauset, is first encounter. And that was the first battle between the 2 people. Musket balls were shot off, arrows were shot off. Nobody got killed. But why did this happen? You can look at the taking of the corn. You can look at the burials being disturbed. Or you can look at what Thomas Hunt did 6 years before, when he took 8 Nauset as slaves. But when they left, they were forced out, and they came to Plymouth, Patuxent, and they found that whole area was devastated by plague. And for us, on the whole, as a people, we don't believe in ownership of land. We believe if nobody lives there, go ahead and settle there. So they're allowed to stay. And a lot of people think, you know, when we had people coming over here before, it was just the men. These people brought women and children, which meant by maybe a friendly type of people. They started building in December 1620. January was a deadly month for them. February was the deadliest. Half died by that time. And they saw 3 different times they saw Native people. They saw Native people walking through the woods with their dogs. They saw Native people on Clark's Island off of Plymouth, 3 miles out. And they saw 2 Native people on top of a hill. And they both were calling to each other. You come here, no, you come here. Both parties never went toward each other, right? But they did hear a whole bunch of voices beyond the hill. So we just weren't 2 people. There was many of us at that time. So let's go back to Squanto, right? There was a very wealthy merchant named Fernando Gorges of England, right? He was asking about who's from Plymouth, Patuxent. They said, well, Squanto is. And okay, go get him. I want to make another trip over there. Well, he's up in Newfoundland with Captain Mason, okay? And this is wind up going backwards a little bit. This is in 1619. So he hired Captain Dermer, went to Newfoundland, picked up Squanto, and went down the coast. Imagine what Squanto was thinking in 1619, seeing the devastation of that plague. Comes to his home of Patuxent, Plymouth. This is before the Pilgrims. This is 1619. And finds out all those people are dead. On the way down in Maine, they stopped at Mohegan Island and picked up a guy named Samoset, who was a Sagamore, a chief, who knew a lot of English captains, could speak English. They ended up going over to Martha's Vineyard, what we call Nope, and Dermer's ship gets attacked. Why that ship got attacked? Is the leader of that community over on Martha's Vineyard, Epinal, also was taken as a slave over London. But he met up with Gorges too, right? And Gorges was asking Epinal, hey, is there gold there? This is in 1614, right? Where your home is at? And Epinal was like, yeah, there's gold there. You bring me home, I'll show you where the gold's at. And they brought him home and he escaped. So 1619, Epinal was thinking, this ain't gonna happen to me again, and taxidermist ship. Squanto, Samoset, jumped over, escaped. We think they went to go live in Massasoit's community of Pokanoket. Massasoit, Pokanoket is what's called Bristol, Rhode Island today, okay? Or Warren, that's what Squanto, that's where Massasoit lived. So Pilgrims are building their houses, right? December, January, February 1621. March of 1621 comes around, and March of 1621 comes around, and Massasoit calls over to Squanto. Samuel said, hey, come here. Why don't you go into Patuxent and find out what these people are doing? I'm used to people coming over. I'm just not used to people coming over and staying. Massasoit was probably already thinking, this ain't one of my own men. I don't care what happens to him. So I'll send him in there. Samoset goes into the Pilgrim village in March of 1621 and greets them in their own language, tells them about the plague. He spends the night, he sleeps overnight in one of the Pilgrims' houses with Stephen Hopkins. Any idea why you think it was Stephen Hopkins? Anybody? He was the only one who had dealt with Native people before. He was in Jamestown in 07. So they think he was familiar with Native people. They fed him, they gave him something to eat. Samoset woke up, said, you know what, I'm not from here. I'm gonna bring you a man who is. He comes along, back, and brings, this will be a picture of a treaty signing right here, but he brings Massasoit. And Massasoit brings 60 of his men, okay? His brother Quataquina, and they make that very famous treaty between the two people. And what the treaty states, basically, if you go to war I'm gonna help you out. If I go to war, you help me out. Aside from that, we keep separate lives. Okay? Why we needed a treaty? We had the Narragansetts in Rhode Island encroaching on us because they weren't affected by the plague. The reason they weren't affected by the plague is we had no physical contact with them, right? So we didn't like them, they didn't like us. So they stayed away, they weren't affected. But they found out, heck, these guys are dying up, I'm gonna start attacking. That's why we needed an ally. There was only about 50 pilgrims at the time, so it wasn't the numbers. But Canonicus, the leader of the Narragansetts, might have been thinking, if Massachusetts making a treaty with one English group, one boat, he might be making a treaty with all of them. Why the pilgrims needed a treaty? How you really felt for them being here and staying depended on how you were treated by European traders prior. If your brother got taken as a slave, you're not gonna have open arms to other people coming in. Combatant, leader of Matapoiso, was against it. And Massasoit was not the chief of all the Wampanoag people. Only one Wampanoag community, a Pokanoket. The reason he's so famous, English wrote about him a lot. That's who they made a treaty with. That's why everything Massasoit, the great leader. He might have been a great leader, but he did not come to all the people. This is Thanksgiving. Now, we all heard about Thanksgiving. It did not happen in November. It happened late September, early October, 1621. Pilgrims learned how to plant. They had a big harvest. They don't even say Massasoit was invited. Massasoit shows up, he brings 90 of his men, okay? Imagine comes to dinner, bring 90 of his men to dinner. He stays 3 days. He gifts the colonists with 5 deer. It's the first dinner of diplomacy, you know, between the two people. Happens 1 year, guys. That's it, 1 year. Hoblock is a man, he was considered to be Massasoit's right-hand man. Massasoit's community, being 40 miles west of Plymouth, needed an ambassadorship out in Plymouth, right? So he sent his Hoblock, who was considered to be a Panisse. A Panisse is a leader, one who counsels on war, one who leads in the battle, a spiritual leader. By European standards, they were considered to be indestructible. He lived out in Plymouth between Stephen Hopkins and Howland's cornfield about 15 years of his life. He was the closest native the English would consider to be a friend. They say later on, in the mid-1630s, he went to go live with Miles Standish in Duxbury. He was out here with his family of 10 people, his wife, and they don't describe his other family members. But it wasn't because of Hoblock history would have been different today. Okay. Next one is Massasoit. A little history about Massasoit. He comes out to Plymouth, makes that treaty signing. He comes out during Thanksgiving. We know he was invited in 1623, right? They say when he comes out, the Governor Bradford's wedding, in August of 1623, he brings 60 men. You guys know what a score is?
20.
20. So he brings 120 men to Bradford's wedding. He brings 5 other leaders from different communities. And from 1623 to 1639, it's weird. There's nothing written about the interaction between the two people for 16 years. The records don't come up. He comes up again in 1639, and reaffirming the treaty. He brings his son and William Sutter out with him. And he eventually dies in 1660, probably of old age. Goes right to King Philip's War, but I don't want to talk about King Philip's War right now. The next one, right, slide I had here is about praying towns, right? There's a lot of things that are placed on our people, and this goes back way before the Pilgrims and the first Europeans here, the Doctrine and Discovery in the 1400s. Basically, if you weren't a Christian, you can do whatever you want and go around to the people. That's what happened. And the first thing that was placed on our people was Christianity. Right or wrong, I'm not going to debate religions. People have their religions because of who they are. I respect that. But that was placed on us in the 1640s. There was a relative of mine named Coombs. He was from Edgartown, over Martha's Vineyard. He knew the King James Bible so well that he was preaching to English people, their religion. But not everybody liked that, right? There's a leader, a Wampanoag leader from Chappaquiddick, called Coombs out here and said, hey, what are you doing? We have our own ways of doing things, and punched him in his face. Yeah. His son, Joel Coombs, went to Harvard University. In 1664, it was an English and native school, Harvard. And in 1664 would have been the first graduating class for native people. There was 5 who attended, right? 3 were Nipmunk. They left school early. 2 from Martha's Vineyard, Caleb and Joel. Joel went home to Martha's Vineyard 2 weeks before graduation, right? And what happened to him on the way back, they stopped in Nantucket, and Joel got killed. It might have been his own people who killed him. It was a very confusing time at that time. What Harvard University did for us in 2009, my family, is they invited us up there for graduation and gave us a posthumous degree in his name. And I had that in my office. I should have brought it here today, shouldn't I? But you had all these missionaries going around, right? You had the Mayhews from the Vineyard. You had the John Cottonwoods. You had, around here, you had Richard Bowens. You had John Eliot's, right? John Eliot formed the first praying town, and that was in 1651, Natick, okay? I'll tell you a little bit more about the Bible when I come up to it, what it meant to us later on. But you got the 40s going by 50s. After Mashpee died, Governor Bradford died right around the same time. I think it was 1658. And you got the second tier of leadership that did not like each other at all. More and more English were coming over and different ways of thought. 1630, Mashpee was established, being Boston. You had all people coming over, different ways of thought about Native people. 1660s was not pretty. You on one side believed in ownership of land, the other side did not. Laws favored one side. Going back to a law that was made, right, banning our ceremonies. And I was trying to figure out who started this, right? Was it Plymouth Colony or was it Mashpee? And I thought it was Plymouth Colony that outlawed our religion, our ceremonies. But it was Mashpee. And I looked it up, I found the date. It was November 4th, 1646. And it states, if any Indian is caught powwowing or celebrating the false gods or devils on English lands, they shall be fined 10 pounds. So I asked an English scholar, what does 10 pounds mean? They vulgarized 10 pounds for an Englishman back then was a half-year salary. Imagine what it was for a native person. So we couldn't do our songs, we couldn't do our dances. That was one of the first of the colonization. So by the time 1675 rolls around, you got Massasoit's son, second son, his first son, in 1662, Warm Sutter, who took over leadership. They called him up to Duxbury with his boy, and they asked him about what they called illegal land sales. They sent him home but kept his boy. Before he left, they gave him something to eat and drink, and Warm Sutter died on the way home. They kept his boy, yeah, and who took over leadership after him was his brother, and that was Metacomet, known as today as King Philip. Okay, and 1675 rolls around, war breaks out. The bloodiest war per capita in New England today. I don't want to get into the battles, but a lot of people lost their lives on both sides. August 12th of 1676, an English captain named Benjamin Church is led out to Pokanoket by a native guide, because he thought he was doing the right thing, to find Metacomet, and they found him. And when they found Metacomet, they dismantled his body limb by limb, took his head off, and brought it back to Plymouth Colony, and put it on the post for 20 years. That was normal to do, not just here, but all of England too. That's a sign, if you go against us, this is what's going to happen. But he had a wife and a kid And they couldn't, well, it's not right to kill them. We can't kill them, but what we can do is sell them off as slaves. And that's what they did. The best silver lining I could think of slavery for our people is that the native people down in Bermuda who were sold, they still have their cultural identity and know who they are as a people. So they come up to their powwow, Mashpee Wampanoag powwow, which a lot of you guys probably have attended, July 4th weekend one year. Then we go visit them another year. So we go back and forth. Imagine that, being slaves like that all those years and still have your identity. But you go, after the losers of the war, it's not pretty for the people, right? Scalping became legal, servitude was legal, slavery was legal. And in 1742, Massachusetts makes a law, and it states, if you're a remnant of a tribe, this is the term they use for us, if you're a remnant from a tribe in Massachusetts, you have to move to one of 4 locations. You have to move to Heron Pond, which is on the canal, or you have to move to Mashpee, or Aquina over Martha's Vineyard, or Grafton. Wampanoag people never moved to Grafton because we knew that was Nipmuc country, but the rest dispersed. There's always been original Mashpee Wampanoag people. As time went on, you had other communities that were dispersed down here. We got the Indian Removal Act. People say that's a Trail of Tears, right? People know it as today. You had President Jackson, which is not my favorite president at all. He forms this law and forces native people from the east west of Mississippi. And the reason I bring it up is because we get Trail of Tears. Those people came to my area too, here, those agents, and were ready to remove the Mashpee Wampanoag away from their homeland. But there was a non-native overseer, I want to say his name was Phineas Fish, and he says, if you move the Wampanoag people, the Mashpee Wampanoag people away from their homeland, they're gonna die. The reason they're gonna die is they rely on seafood in their diet, and they believe them. That's why I can still be here today talking to you guys. You know, we can still be on our homeland. Missing a few slides here, but I don't know why. But the next slide I had here, along my memory right now, is we had whaling, right? Whaling was very, very big for our people. Huge, huge. Back in the 18th and 18th century, we literally went whaling all around the world. All around the world. Some of us stayed in port. There were mutinies on these boats, shipwrecks. But we did a whaling exhibit, right, in the Mashpee Wampanoag Museum, produced by Ramona Peters and also Jason Mancini. Ramona Peters being a Wampanoag elder, and Jason Mancini was the former director of the Pequot Museum down in Connecticut. And they put this whaling exhibit together. And an elementary student can read this whaling museum, because how it is, it shows a map of the world, and it shows red dots where we went, and what numbers on these red dots. So if you see a dot down in South America, it says 51, you go over to the list and look at 51, you can see the captain's name, the name of the ship, if that Wampanoag person came back, if they stayed in port, if they died, if there was a mutiny on that ship. It's really cool. So I found 2 of my family members who went out whaling, and one went to the Pacific, came back. The other one went to the west side of South America and came back. So I didn't realize that myself till this exhibit was put together, that we went all around the world. Language, right? Language is a hot topic today, right? If you can have your language, keep it, no matter what it is. Hold on to it. We came that far from losing our language. Back in the early 1900s, if you weren't speaking English, you weren't speaking the right language. For a lot of cultures of people, so you'd be made fun of, ridiculed. So a lot of us weren't speaking it, unless it was inside the house. Back in the 1990s, there was a woman from my community, you might have heard of her, Jessie Little Doe Beard. She won the MacArthur Award for Genius. She was having dreams. She said people were coming into her dream speaking a different language, and it wasn't English. She said the faces looked like familiar like Mashpee Wampanoag, but did not know their names. One of her dreams, the people came and spoke English to her. They said if the Mashpee Wampanoag people could have their language back, would they say yes? Right? And she went around to community members, do we want our language spoken again? And I'm like, yeah, of course, if we can get it back. So she went to MIT, graduated with a degree in linguistics, and started piecing language back together again. How this was done. Some elders who could still speak a little bit. Similar language families. Old documents from time out in the 1630s that was written in Wampanoag. You can find that in the Mass Archives, a lot of this. But what helped out the most, let's go back to John Eliot, right? With that King James Bible. He was preaching to Native people his religion, but he felt like the Native people weren't picking it up quick enough. So what he did, he learned Wampanoag himself, hired on translators, and wrote the King James Bible in Wampanoag.
Wow.
And we have one of those first editions in our language project. So that brought our language full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a documentary about, it's called We're Still Here, about the language project itself. You guys can check it out. That's a pretty cool story right there. So we do have our language back today. My wife is one of the teachers of the language. But today there's a lot of celebrations going on. We have the oldest powwow around New England. It's 102 years old going on, July 4th weekend. We encourage you guys to come out, check us out. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this year. We have about 10,000 guests for 3 days. We dance, we sing. We bring your chair, immerse yourself into the culture. And we have today during the powwow, you see dances, you see a lot of good foods, you see crafters. We also do special type of dances, it's dances. This right here is Coombs dance, my family's dance. And it's for my brother. Back in '97, Melvin Coombs, he was a championship dancer. He could move, and a lot of kids looked up to him on his style of dancing. And he got killed, unfortunately, back in '97. So we do a special dance for him. We invite all the Eastern Warp dancers out. And his famous dance he loved to do was the crow hop. You guys ever seen a crow when it's hopping? So you got to imitate that crow as it goes in a sleep. So we get all the dancers out there doing the crow hop. And it's up to the family to pick the best one, But what's going on to present day right now, what's new and hot for us is, have you guys heard of the 12 Acres project we got going on?
Yep.
Right in Mashpee, right by the Wakeby Lake, the pond. Back in '76, it's called the Mashpee 9. If you haven't seen the documentary or seen the book, we were down there practicing our sovereign rights, singing, drumming. We had lodges built down there in 12 acres by the pond. And it was a very, very tough time because we were going after undeveloped lands. But we were going against realtors, lawyers, and we lost, but we had many police departments came down there and kind of arrested most of the people down there, 9 people, and kind of wrecked the site down there. So we have a grant, and what we're doing with this grant is training our youth into material culture, teaching them how to build these houses, right? Teaching them how we live and still live, how we lived back then. Our lodges, teaching them songs, teaching them how to make a clay pot. And we're planning on building this right on 12 acres. And it's gonna hopefully happen this year. It's going back and forth with the selectmen. So we're hoping to do that. And it's not just for us, for our learning, it's for our community. And when I mean like a community, you guys are in the community. You're folks, right? But it's all about education. You can't go wrong about education. It's all about teaching. We want to have school buses come there and teach the kids of all ages, not just our own. So if any way you can support that, that'd be great. So sometimes it can be an uphill battle. So, but yeah, so that's my presentation, guys. I apologize for the slides on what happened to them. Can I answer any questions you might have?
I have
Yeah.
one. I've always wondered where did King Philip get his name as King Philip? Why was he called that?
That's a good question. The English would give any native person of high stature a European name of high stature. So if you're a chief, they compared it to a king. That's what they call King Mashpee. What Mashpee means is great leader. That we think that's his title. We know Mashpee's name was Usamiquan. What Usamiquan means is yellow feather. So yeah, just compatible, king, chief, sergeant. So
Okay.
that's the idea.
So-
His original name was Metacomet. They
Right.
call him King Philip. They call Wampanoag his oldest boy, Alexander. So
Is there a museum around here that has an exhibit of King Philip with his war club and that sort of thing? Have you heard of that?
you know about his war club?
I heard it got stolen. It got stolen. Somebody found it at a yard sale. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's true.
That's true. They found Metacomet's war club at a yard sale. His war club, I've had it in my hand. I made a replica of that.
Wow.
It has wampum inlay on the back, on the spine. It's a ball-headed tomahawk, wooden ball up top. Yeah, you can see it. It's in Harvard, Mass,
Oh,
at a
okay.
museum called Fruitlands.
Okay.
Fruitlands Museum.
Okay.
They have that.
Great.
Fruitland, yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us about the, I think it was 1833, the Mashpee uprising?
The Woodlot riot?
Yeah, that's
The Woodlot?
riot.
Yeah, it's like, I know a little bit about that. That's when we had William Apis.
William Apis.
Yeah, he was a Pequot minister, and he was at our meeting house. A slide I would show you guys you guys know our meeting house, all right? Our meeting house road. That's the oldest in the United States. I think that was built in 1684. But William Apis was here preaching religion, and there was people coming around our land here and taking trees for whaling and firewood or whatever, but what I'm gonna ask them to go around to our lands and doing that. So we brought that to the state of Massachusetts and got it stopped, but I don't think, it wasn't a physical riot, but that's what they're calling it, is a wood riot, so. Samson was one of them. But you guys can check that out, it's common knowledge, yeah.
Well, there was another encroachment along the Santua River where Mashpee once had boundaries that went further west, including Wacoit, I think.
Yeah,
And,
like Mashpee these are town lines.
Yeah,
We're going by the rivers as boundaries and such.
right.
So, yeah, you got Sippawisset, Wacoits, but we spread a little farther out than where it is right now. Yeah. Yes?
What was the interaction between the Wampanoag and the African slaves?
You know, that's a good question. There was a lot of intermarrying later on, you know. But what I can tell you about the African slaves is the first time there was slavery on our homeland here was in the 1630s. And that was down in Connecticut, first time in Connecticut, during the Pequot. I'm not gonna call it a war, it was a massacre. The fort got burnt down and Pequots burnt to death. And the ones remaining, they basically said that they enslaved them, but guess what? We can't enslave you guys on your homeland because you're more likely to escape. So what we're gonna do is trade you for African American slaves. So they brought the African Americans here and sent the Pequots out. There's still a lot of Pequots here, but a lot got shipped out. So yeah, there's still relations. There's still a lot of intermarrying. So servitude was big, like I said, during the 1800s. They say in the 1800s, I think it was over close to 70% of the houses on Cape Cod had Native kids in there for servitude to pay off fines and taxes and all that. You got Mashpee became incorporated in 1870. Same thing was in the Quinn. It was a big year. The two towns were incorporated. What that means, we lost a lot of our sovereign rights, became a town. It was taken, you know. And what that meant for us, oh, guess what? We're gonna give you back around 25 acres of your own land again, right? But now it's considered to be a town, now we can tax you on it. It's all a game.
Such a deal.
Such a deal. And we're not a wealthy people, so a lot of us lost the land. Yes.
Any interaction with the Vikings?
You know, there's no written recording, but we know they're here. We know there's different, I don't even want to call it petroglyphs on different stones, and these are Viking symbols that we're finding a lot of. So I had no doubt they were here long before anybody else, aside from our own people. I think they were the first ones here to interact with people. But there's nothing written down, so we don't know too much about that. I have no doubt about it. Yes.
Well, there's a record of 12,000 years. What happened during the glacial period?
Yeah, stories say that we were down farther south, southwest. That's where we originate. 12,000 years of glaciers what melted, and we worked our way up here. So we believe the stories of our creator being down in the southwest, and we migrated up here 12,000 years ago. And so you got the global warming going on, which is you had all the Elizabeth Islands. That was all mainland. And eventually, because of what's going on, it's got more water now. So we were not always planters. We were hunters and fishermen, most mainly. And we didn't have the vegetables until maybe close to 2,000 years ago, 1,500 to 2,000. And the corns and beans, they originate down South America. And they were brought up. The squash, we produce from a squash blossom. So we breeded that ourselves. If you, what we just built in Quashnet Elementary School, and I was a teacher of it, we got a lot of youth, tribal youth that goes to these schools. And Quashnet Elementary goes from 3rd grade to 6th grade. So I work with these kids, lunch bunches, tribal boys, and we built a little village inside their courtyard. It's gonna be grand opening going on. Actually, we're opening to the community. So if you guys wanna check that out, it's next Wednesday, May 15th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And the public's invited, to come in, check out. We have it's called 13 Moons, same as this is. We have a little planting area. We got a little a house, 10-foot house. We got a maritime area. We got a cooking area, and we have a hunting area. That goes all in rotation from New Year's on. And the kids built it themselves. They went out and cut the trees down, material. They do the planting. So what we want to do it because it gives them self-pride in who they are. There's been no doubt about it. These are facts that there's been trauma going on amongst our people. And you can see it. Like I worked in Plymouth, that museum known as Plymouth Plantation for over 30 years. It's called Plymouth Patuxent. The knowledge I've gained over those years about my own people, I wanted to give back. I live in Mashpee, and I live 3 minutes away from my job, but now I give back to the students, right? The teachers teach. I do a lot of PDs, professional development conferences, and I see a lot of trauma. Like I guess something that's called tribal boys, grades 3 through 6. We go on field trips. We visit elders. We try to teach them the right way to think about honor, respect. But out of these 12 boys I have, 3 of them have both parents at home, and the others are guardians or grandparents, or adopted or whatever, And you can see it. You can see it. When I go in these schools, it's if I miss a day, they get mad at me. They really do. They say, "Where were you?" I'm like, "I was in the hospital." But I can tell they really rely on you. And I get it, because when I was a kid, my dad passed when I was 10. My mom had a breakdown, so I really didn't have parents from 10 on. And I remember my aunt, who took care of me, was saying, "We're going to get you a big brother." That was a big thing back then. I was looking forward to that, too, and I never got that. So I can see how it is. I was there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Darius.
All right.